Okay. Welcome to this last session of the NAMA schools, the big group. We are 22 schools. I don't know how many of you are actually, how many schools, maybe some of you are from more than one school. So it might be that we don't have all the schools represented, but we are very happy. I'm very happy to see you all here. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. I have in the chat box put for you the Google slide link. I will also, I have shared it with Mr. Seleman and he can put it in your group, but I will also again share with you the link in the chat so that you can also find it there. Let me just quickly put it there. Okay. Right. Okay, excellent. Right, so I'm not going to do all the talking. I really would like you to participate and to also give your opinions, ask questions, and participate. The only thing I see immediately that I didn't change was the date. Let me just change the date on this slide. Wow, time flies by so quickly, right? 24 August. There we go. Right. Okay, so in this session, we're going to address something that's really important, and that's something that a lot of you have been asking me, and that is around school policies. So, and we will look at the NAMA index indicators. I will give you some practical guides. Some of you are also schools who are getting extra coaching from Madame Ajabu, Mr. Combo, and also Madame Salmu. And both Mr. Combo and Madame Ajabu are also in this call, so they can also respond to some questions. And we are going to also have another session, coaching session by them to also help and support you with the development of your school policies. So, and I really want us to just start off by asking, oh, and I just want to remind you, if you want to find the chat in on your laptop, you will see it there, and on your phone, you will see it at the bottom of your mobile. So I really need you to participate. You can also raise a hand if you click on the more button. If you have a question, you can just click the button and you can raise a question. Unfortunately, I am not in your big WhatsApp group, so we can't use the WhatsApp, but please use the chat if you have any questions. So the first question that I have for you now is, why do we need policies? And also then we will look at what policies do you already have in place in your school. So that's my first question to you, is this question. And I'd like you to please, if you can, if you want to participate, it will be nice if you can just talk and participate and share your opinions. Why do we need policies in our school? Do you think it is necessary? Do you think you have to have it in your school? You know, what difference does it make? And you know, is it something that you've learned about recently, or is it something you've always been doing? So my question: why do we need policies in our school? Unmute yourself and you can just respond. Or else I'll have to start asking volunteers. Majabu, let's start with you. Why do we need policies in our school?
Well, policies act as our guideline for implementation of the school improvement plan. because you might have a lot of things. So you want to implement, for example, we need to have, we are using cooperative learning strategies and assessment for learning strategy. If you didn't analyze or indicated in the policies among of the objective for the teachers in order to have a good performing for the student, we need to have this policy to guide the teachers what are supposed to be implemented in the class. At the same time, if you want to do the performance management and performance development for the teacher, you need to have a policy that can guide you. What are the weaknesses of the teacher? What are the areas that need improvement? So policy acts as a guideline toward the implementation, and at the end of the day, you can identify either you have managed to achieve your objective or have not yet achieved your objective. And sometimes policies must be reviewed. You may see that during the pandemic of COVID-19, we used to adapt using we are a face-to-face classroom session. But some schools, they have adapted the online training. So they have developed the online training policy to guide them for effective implementation and teaching and learning process. So this is generally a guideline for the school improvement plan. That's all.
That's a very comprehensive answer, Majabu. Thank you very much for that contribution. Yes, as you said, it is a guideline. It tells people what is expected of them. And let's hear, is there anybody else who would like to add something about why you feel you should have policies in your school? What about Mr. Ali Issa? I know you've been asking questions about policies, Mr. Ali. So why do you feel policies are necessary? Are you there?
Yeah, thank you very much, madam. I think my teacher Mwajabu has answered almost all the what I have, but simply that is just just to improve the performance. That's all.
That's good. That's good. Your teacher,
Yeah,
right?
thank you. Yes, my teacher. Yeah.
That's excellent. Good job, Madam Ajabu. Okay, so yes, and I mean, she gave a textbook answer, right? So a very comprehensive answer that really explains to us why we need what is going on now? Why we need policies in our school. I don't know who is, wait, hang on a minute. What happened here now? I wonder if somebody is writing on the slides. What kind of editing rights did I give you? Just hang on a minute. Can view. So I didn't give editing rights. I don't know what happened here. Okay, well, in any case, that's really strange. Okay, I'm just going to reload the slide deck. Oh, it could be because of the sharing of the screen. Okay, in any case, let me not get sidetracked by that. Okay, so what is a policy? A policy is a set of expectations, rules, regulations. It explains the guideline. It's the guideline. It tells teachers, stakeholders, parents, students, people in the administration, people who work with finance, people who everybody, the bus drivers. What are the policies? The policies help us. It defines the rules, the regulations, and the procedures for the school. And it's very, very, very necessary to ensure the school runs smoothly, that it is safe, and that everybody who comes onto the school premises understand exactly what needs to be done, what the necessary things are that needs to be done, how we do it. You know, it's like if people ask you, okay, so how do you do it in your school? Well, this is the way we do it. Why? because this is the way we believe. This is our vision. This is our culture. And the policy must explain to others what is the culture. And the policy also helps when somebody leaves the school and somebody new comes in and they don't know what to do, you can refer them to the policy. New teachers, what's expected of you in the classroom? Look at the policy. Parents, discipline policy, hostile policy. But let me not give away the answers. What I would like us to do now is I would like us to look at the next slide. And that is a little bit of an interactive activity. So I'm going to post this link in the chat box. So tonight I'm checking your understanding of the Google of Zoom, and I'm pasting this in the chat box, and you can just click on this link, right? Just click on the link, and then it will take you to this set of slides, right? So find your school name. There are two questions I have for you. Policies I already have in my school, and then policies that I know I should have in my school, but I don't have yet. So next to your school name, just write down what policies do you already have. And then on the next set of slides, what policies do you want to create that you know you should have, but you don't have any already? So I'm going to give you just a few minutes to find your school and just add your name. And if you need help, let me know. So first, there's two slides with two sets of schools. So you will just find your school name, and then you can just write there in the column next to it, what policies do you have? And then what policies do you want to create in your school that you don't have yet? Excellent. I see people are writing. Well done. Amana has a health policy. Well done. Resource disposal. Very good. What about the rest? I see lots of people are entering. If you need help, let me know.
How can I write from my phone, madam, please?
If you're on your phone, it's not that easy, right? When you're on your phone, you actually need to download an app. You have to install an app to help you so that you can write on the Google site. So is that Mr. Ali?
Yeah, I'm
okay.
the one.
Mr. Ali, you can always tell me what's your policies, and then I can put it in for you. Or you can write it in the chat if you want.
We have an employment policy already.
Okay, what school are you again? Sorry,
As-Salafi.
As-Salaf, that's right.
Yeah.
You have an employment policy.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yes, any other policy? Okay, it's fine. It doesn't matter. If you don't have many policies, it's okay. You already have one policy. That's fantastic. Anybody else who needs help, you can always, if you need, you can tell me and I can write it in for you if you're on your phone and you're struggling. So Mr. Ali, what policies would you like to develop in your school?
We want to develop teaching and learning policies.
Okay, teaching and learning. Anything else? It's okay. It's okay. That's a policy, and that's the next step for you, right? Okay. Right, let's see. We have Mkuzo has a nurturing policy, financial policy, and employment policy. Excellent. I see Amana, a further education policy. That's very interesting. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that one, and what that is, what you are planning. And some people are drawing nice lines for us on the screen. It doesn't matter. I'll just remove it. Luckily, I can just erase it easily. Resource teaching and learning policy. Okay, come. What about the rest? Are you struggling to write on this? Or if you on your phone, you will struggle, right? Because you need an app that you need to put. I don't know who's drawing these nice lines for us. But luckily I have a magic eraser, so I can just erase it. Okay, one more minute, and then I'm going to leave this so that you can do this afterwards, after the session. What about algebra? I don't see anything for algebra.
Algebra, they have a lot of policies.
I know. That's why I'm saying add a little bit. I'll put the link. Here we go. Mr. Mohammed Desero, which school are you in? Algebra. Oh, there's algebra. Okay, I got it. House policy, school assembly policy. Oh, goodness. Okay. Yeah, you are absolutely right, Mr. Ali. They have a lot of policies in algebra. Let me just.
I know. I have to copy some from them.
Oh, you're lucky.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I have a lot of teachers.
Okay. Let's make it a little bit bigger. So at least. Okay. Majabu also wrote there. Yes, they also have teaching and learning policy, performance management policy, financial policy, resources management policy. Algebra, you are the policy king, it seems. Well done.
Policy
Alpha La has an education policy. Okay, let's just put this. Alpha La, is this Alpha La Muslim or Alpha La Islamic? Mr. Eid? Are you Alpha La Islamic or Alpha La is Muslim?
Hello.
Yes.
Alpha La Islamic.
Islamic. Oh, okay. So you have an education policy. That would be interesting to understand what that is. So can you perhaps tell us, if you say education policy, what do you mean by that?
In educational policy, we put the whole system of teaching and learning there, the principles of teachers, etc.
So it's a very broad title, right? And learning policy. Okay. So Mr. Ayub, which school are you?
Ambasha Islamic Ipemba.
Ambasha. Okay, excellent. I can
Yes.
put that in there. Very good. I'm just trying to help you put it in your boxes. Mr. Musa Bariti, which school are you from?
Ibn Jazari.
Sorry, which school? Mr. Musa, which school are you?
Ibn Jazari.
Which school is that? I don't get it.
Ibn Jazari.
Yeah, okay, got it. Let me just go to the next slide. Okay. There we go. All right. Okay, you can continue with this later, but it looks really promising. I see lots of policies are now coming up, and a lot of you are adding some policies that you have in your schools. But we will work on it a little bit more. All right. So we will get back to this. Let's get back to our slides. It's nice to see your participation. It's nice to see how you're adding and how you are participating in the session. That's wonderful. Okay, so let me just present, because it's nice if it's nice and big. So let's look at some of the policies that NAMA and the NAMA Index are recommending for you to have in your school. We're talking about a behavior policy. Oh, there's people in the waiting room. Let me just admit them. A behavior policy. What is a behavior policy? What would you think is a behavior policy all about? A behavior policy. What would be another name for behavior policy? We could also call it a discipline policy, but a behavior policy is more positive than discipline policy, right? So we try to use that word behavior because we're also looking at positive behavior and the rules, the discipline rules, how it works, but also what are the rewards for students who behave well. And so that's that comprehensive policy. A classroom environment policy. So here we are talking about what the classroom environment should look like, displays, arrangement of desks, use of classroom resources, all kinds of things that needs to happen within the classroom itself. So not the teaching, but the environment in the classroom. We have an emergency policy. What kind of emergencies can happen in a school? That would mean you would need an emergency or disruption policy. What's happening in the world today? We have that's disrupting the schools. We have COVID, right? So that's a big disruption because many schools are closed. And I know in Tanzania, the numbers are climbing up. So I hope that you're not going to have a disruption of your school. But you can also have emergencies in your school. What kind of emergency can you have in your school that would need a policy so that everybody knows what they should be doing in case of this emergency? Come, you are school principals. I'm sure you've had that in your or you've at least encountered some of these emergencies. Let's hear. What kind of emergencies can you have in your school? Mr. Juma?
Okay, madam. Yes, among of the emergencies which can happen in the school, especially we may appear accident, disaster, death of student or any staff. These are kind of emergencies which can happen in the school during the normal
Absolutely, program. Absolutely. It can be a fire, right? It can be death, an accident that happens in the school, especially if you have a hostel, right? And we live in you live in Africa, right? We know that there are other things that happen in neighboring countries. How safe is your school? You know, or maybe a natural disaster, floods. You know, so there's a lot of things that can happen, and people need to know what to do when that emergency happens, right? So else there will be chaos. Nobody knows Where must we go? There's a fire. What do we do? Where do we, or somebody is very badly injured. What do we do? Where do we go? Who's responsible? You need those policies so that everybody knows what to do when we have emergencies like that. Thank you so much for your response. We have a health and safety policy. Now today, health and safety is really important with COVID, right? So you will have all the COVID protocols, the masks and the distancing and the sanitization, but also health and safety in terms of normal diseases. I mean, there are other illnesses in Africa that happens, right? Health and safety in terms of the cleanliness of the school, cleaning the school, cleaning the floor, the health, the safety of the food that is served in the canteen, or when children bring, what may children bring to school and not. You know, you can't bring a knife, you can't bring, you know, what can you do, what can't you do, all to protect the children. And if a child falls ill, it's not an emergency of somebody dying, but, you know, in case of illness, what is your policy? How do you manage this? So it's really important. We also have a IT technology policy. What kind of thing do you think would come under your technology or your IT policy?
No.
Yes, let me hear. What will you put in this policy? Your IT technology policy. Have you even ever thought of this kind of policy? Do you allow children to bring their mobile phones to school or to the classroom? Yes or no?
No, no.
Never.
No.
So that must be in your policy. Do you have computers in your school? Who can use them? How are they used? Access to the internet, any devices in your school, even the use of technology in the school. So if the school has digital projectors, where do they, if the teachers want to show YouTube video as part of the lesson, how do you deal with this? Do you give children homework to do, use of, we say no, children can't bring devices, but we also can't keep children away from the internet because we give them research to do. So anything to do with computers, with the use of devices, with internet, what is allowed, what's not allowed, must be covered in your IT policy, right? Let's go to some more. So I'm not saying you should have all of these policies now, but you should think about the future, and you should perhaps start thinking which policies are most important to start off with if you don't have them. Finance policy is everything to do with finances, the payment of school fees, payment of trip fees, requisitions. So teachers wouldn't have too much to do with your finance policy, but it's something that your administrative staff would have to know, but teachers would have to know if I need to get funds for a school trip and I'm taking the children to on a trip to the zoo. How does that work? If we raise funds for a trip, where does the money go? How does it work? So everything around finances. Every school needs a finance and administration policy, right? A parent and community engagement policy. Do you have a school governance council with parents? Do you have regular meetings with parents? Do you engage in the community around you? What is your policy? What's your expectation of teachers to engage with the community and with the parents? Staff performance management and development. How do you monitor the teachers? are the teachers really doing their work? Are the teachers skilled? Are the teachers meeting all the requirements of that you expect them to do, not only in the classroom, but also outside the classroom? And how do you develop teachers? I was very interested to see many of you mention staff development or additional development policies. So clearly, if a teacher wants to study further, if a teacher wants time off or wants to do a master's degree, or just the normal teacher development, what kind of development do you offer in your school? So all of this comes in the staff performance management policy. In some countries where you are teaching online, the school also needs an online teaching policy. So what is expected of teachers when they can't teach from the school, but teach online? Then there are things like a hostel policy, an admissions policy, school facilities and resource management policy. And then also, of course, important, the teaching and learning policy. So if you have to choose two of these policies that you think are the most important in your school, which two would you choose? Can you write in the chat box? Which two will you choose? Let's see what you are saying, what you will be saying. Which two policies would you choose as the most important? Write in the chat. Teaching and learning, Mr. Juma says the teaching and learning policy and the IT policy. Mr. Selemani says finance policy. Okay. What do the rest say? Behavior and admission, Mr. Ali? I don't know, Mr. Suleiman, you say you can't hear the sound. I can't help you with that. I think everybody else can see. Okay, finance policy. Yes, what about the rest? Which policies do you believe are most important? Teaching and learning policy, says Mr. Musa. Mr. Mohammadi says teaching and learning. Mr. Hussein says behavior and health and safety. Mr. Eid says finance and teaching and learning. It's a tough one, right? Because, you know, if you don't have the finances managed well in your school's going to be a disaster, right? Because teachers won't get their salaries. If you don't have a safety, health and safety policy, if you don't have a behavior policy, yes, Mr. Mohammadi, all are very important. But if you have none, or if you don't have these two policies in your school, I think financial policy is essential, right? I think that one. But if we look at the improvement, school improvement and the development of the school, these two policies are the policies that you absolutely must have in your school. Your teaching and learning policy and your staff performance development and management policy. So all these policies are important, but these two are essential. And you have to have this in your school. Why? Why do you think I'm saying that these two are really important? What do you say? Why would I say teaching and learning and staff evaluation and staff performance management are two really important policies that you must have in your school? Who's going to try and tell us why I'm saying that?
Major function of a school is the student teaching. I mean, it relies on teaching and learning. So that's why having such kind of policy, which will always ensure that the teachers and the general staff, as well as the parents, understands what really school need and what the parent should expect from the school. These things are stipulated in the policy. So we might have some struggling teachers that the staff performance management development would cut across on the best way on how to support these teachers and make them, develop them to a point that they can fit with the expectation of the school teaching learning policy. So the two policy running together to meet the purpose of a school.
It's a textbook answer, Mr. Combo. Perfect answer. Yes. I mean, that is what a school is all about, right? It is about ensuring that the students learn. That's what it is. Students learn, students develop, and that's our core function as a school. So this sits at the heart of the school. What do we believe? What should teaching and learning be like in our school? What is our philosophy of teaching? What do we expect of our teachers in every lesson? And every new teacher who comes in, the first thing they must get is the teaching and learning policy. And we will talk about that a little bit later. And then, as Mr. Combo said, some teachers might be struggling. How will you know if teachers are implementing or are meeting the standards? So what is that process of evaluating the teacher's performance and also developing the teacher's performance? And if they don't develop, if they are struggling to meet the standards, what are you going to do about it? And the teacher, as not only in the classroom, but the teacher's role in supporting the school, and your staff policy can also cover your administrative staff as well. That can be a separate section in your staff performance management policy. So that is why I'm saying that if you have no other policy in your school at the moment, or if you have other policies, but you don't have these two policies, this should be your absolute next step. So I've also included here for you some explanations of what these policies are that I have mentioned, but I might not have covered all of the policies. Like I saw in your list some policies that's not on my list, but they are very important. So somebody put environment policy. I think that's amazing. Who was it who had an environment policy? Yes, who mentioned that they have an environmental policy? Somebody did. We can go to the chat if you can't remember what you wrote. Who was it who said that you have an environment policy in your school? Yes? Let me see. Who was it who wrote about environment?
It was Mr. Mohamedi Migeto from Kirinjiko.
Ah, okay, Mr. Mohamedi, are you there? Can you tell us a bit about your environment policy? Here we go. Yes, your environment policy.
Even Kudus, they have environmental policy.
Ah, and Kudus, tell us about your environment policy. Mr. Mohamedi? Mageto? Yes. Can you tell us about your environment policy? What is in that policy?
Kama kapiga je.
Yes? Okay, it's okay. Why do you think, let's just put this to the general group. Why do you think maybe in today's world, we need an environment policy? Come guys, you are principals, you are school leaders. You need to be able to participate in this conversation. Lead by example, right? Mr. Selemani, Nanume, what do you say? Mr. Juma, are you going to tell us something?
Yeah, I want to share something about environmental policy. As you know, environment also is a broad concept, but in general term, we are trying to consider that environment which can be seen by everybody around, which can make a first impression that this school is very good school. External environment, maybe flowers, trees, good arrangement of buildings, classroom. So for any serious person can see that external perception of the school is automatically, maybe it is very good school according to that environment. But also according to the, you know, sometimes we may have drought or floods. So if you don't have environmental policy, you may find that even if your construction or buildings can be destroyed by water flow, that is floods. Or sometimes if there is no trees, maybe wind is very strong in that area, you may destroy your buildings. So if you have an environmental policy, all these things can be considered even before any disaster.
That's a fantastic response. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the first impressions always count, right? So in your environment policy, you would look at the neatness of the school against, you know, rules for pollution, for littering, for maybe also in today's world to try and conserve energy, to try and conserve paper, reuse and recycle could be part of your environment policy, right? That is very, very important, and I love it, and it's not on my list. And you might have other ones. Some of you have a nurturing policy, which I also like a lot. You know, how do we develop these students? You could have a citizenship or a student holistic development or nurturing policy or emotional intelligence. I don't know. You know, so there's a lot else that you could add to the list. This list is not include, you know, the whole list. And different schools might have different policies. But as I said, these two are really essential, and it is an expectation that the school has it. So let's move on. What did the baseline data of this baseline exercise that we did? You all said that, all of you wrote, most of you wrote that you do have your policy, your report. So what did this show us in terms of percentages and in terms of the distribution of the data of those indicators that are specifically focused on whether the school has policies? Now, the policies will influence every indicator, because every indicator will cover something that's described or explained in one of your policies. But if we look at school life leader number 4, this indicator is really focusing on whether the school administration has all the important policies in place, right? And what did we see? You know, there are 4 performance bands. And of the 4 performance bands, if we look at SLL 4, 90% of the schools in Tanzania that we looked at during the baseline exercise scored only in level 1 at level 1 8.4, the lowest score of the baseline exercise, which tells us that 20 out of the 22 schools did not meet the requirements beyond band 1. Now, the good news about this is it's something that is easy to fix. If you start developing and putting those policies in place, even if you just add 2 or 3 more policies that are implemented, shared, and monitored, you will automatically go into the second band next year. This is a very easy fix for you to do, but it is a big weakness in the schools in Tanzania. Let's look at the second set of data, and that is teaching and learning success, right? So that's what LS, learning success, stands for. And here we look at the leadership indicators, LS, L1, 2, and 3. And again, you will see even higher, only 4.8%, which basically means I think it's one school scored in band 2 for LS L1, LS L2, and LS L3. And these 3 indicators has to do with teaching and learning policy and teacher staff performance management and development. So it is clear that this is an area for development for all of the schools in Tanzania. And even if you were one of the schools or are at level 2, your next target should be to aim to work towards level 3. Right. And I've just put from the NAMA index, the actual description, and I'm not going to go into it in detail, but I will read to you, and let's go back, this one, right? SLL 4, School Life Leaders 4, develop, monitor, and share protocols, policies, quality standards, effective management standards. This is all about policies, systems, procedures, structures that is in place in your school to ensure that your school runs smoothly, safely, and that people know what to do and what is expected of them. And when you look at the leadership indicators, we've covered this in a previous session, it's about embedding a learning culture in your school, which is clearly defined, explained in your teaching and learning policy. You cannot get anything above a 1 if you don't have a teaching and learning policy in your school. And for the second one, monitor the process and impact of teaching and learning in your school, and you have a system for staff performance management. You cannot get anything above a 1 if you don't have a staff performance management policy in your school. And the third one is about staff professional development, which goes into your staff performance management and development policy. So if you don't have those documents in place, but it goes for all of the NAMA indicators. If we talk about parent and community engagement, if you don't have a clear policy, you will not be able to get anything more than a 2. So it's very important for you to ensure that you focus on these policies. And here's the rubric. You have this rubric. I have shared this policy. And again, in this slide deck, you will see this rubric and you can click on it. You can print it. You can highlight it to see where are you now. If you are a 1, it means you are here. You need to work towards a 2. When you are a 2, you need to work towards a 3. And I've just highlighted for you here in this where it mentions staff appraisal, staff development policy, teaching and learning policy. So I know I sound like a broken record, but we cannot expect of teachers to do what they are supposed to do if they don't know what they are supposed to do. You cannot grow your school if you and your team have not defined what does good teaching and learning look like in your school. And your school might be slightly different from another school, but some of the basics will always have to be there. What is it that you want to be known as? Do you want to be known as a thinking school? Do you want to be known as an innovative school? Do you want to be known as a research school? Do you want to be known as a 21st century school? What is it that you want the characteristic of your lessons, your teaching, your students' learning to be like? And that needs to be written down in a policy. Now, this policy can be a thin document if you start out. It doesn't have to be a huge document, right? Rather make it simple. Keep it short and simple, and you can review it year on year. But you need that document. So imagine a new teacher coming in. This is what is expected. When you do the lesson observation, we are looking at whether the things we put in the teaching policy is in place. When we do the evaluation of the teacher, we look at the planning, we look at the assessment, we look at the quality of the lessons, we look at the student work, and we look whether the teacher is using the things we believe should be happening in the classroom. And that is written in my teaching and learning policy. It ensures there's consistency. It means that this teacher doesn't teach like this and that one teach like that. Or I like this method and you like that method. It is consistent. So the same kind of approaches is followed across your school. And it ensures that all the students get quality teaching and learning experiences. So if you define, okay, we believe in student collaboration, and the methods we believe in is cooperative learning structures, and this and this and this. We promote thinking in our school by using visible thinking skills, graphic organizers, inquiry-based learning. We believe feedback and continuous assessment is important. So we use assessment for learning principles. This one, this one, this one should be in all of the lessons. You just explain to the teachers what you want to see. And if you click on this link here, it will take you to some examples of policies. These are some of them are, maybe a little bit too advanced, but I'm sure a lot of you can pick some phrases from here, right? So, and there is some tips for you, how can you decide? For example, what is the non-negotiable? In other words, this is what all teachers must do. And then you can have things that teachers could do. And here are some examples. You can click on these links. You can download these policies. You can copy and amend some of the statements in these policies. I don't think you can just take another school's policy and just put your logo on, because it's not going to work. It must be shaped to match your environment, right? What do you have? What resources do you have? What do your classrooms look like? What IT do you have available? How advanced are the skills of your teachers? You can't just take another school's policy and say, this is our teaching and learning policy, because that will not work for you. You've got to you can look at these examples and you can choose and see what is relevant for you. But what you should have in your policy is the school's vision, mission, and values. So in Kudos Secondary Islamic School, I don't know if that's the full title, pardon me. We believe that students should be at the center of the learning in the classroom. We believe this. This is our mission. We want to develop 21st century learners. So that should be clear in your policy. Just make sure that you just mute yourself. Yeah. I just wanted to unmute him. Secondly, and I mean, basically your vision, your mission, and your objectives, it's basically the same thing, right? We want to promote, prepare learners for the 21st century. We will offer a curriculum that promotes thinking skills, or that promotes the 4 C's or 5 C's of 21st century learning: collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, and citizenship. Those are the 5 C's, or character. Some people say character, some people say citizenship. So what is it that your school will offer? What makes your school also different from the school next door? And then in this policy, you look at all the things involved in the teaching and learning process, right? The planning, what's expected from teachers, the lessons themselves, what's the pedagogy that you want to see, assessment of learners, marking of books, exams. So all of this is covered in your teaching and learning policy. So what all teachers must do, and what you would like most teachers to do. And to help you even more, I'm sharing with you, and you will also, those of you who are in the coaching groups with Mr. Komba and Madam Ajabu, you will see this again, because we are really focusing on trying to give you as much help as we possibly can. We've actually developed a template that you can use, and in this template you will be able to fill in certain elements of the policy. And there is also if you click on it, you will see you can basically take this template, put your logo, who wrote the policy, what's the date, when will it be reviewed, because as Madam Ajabu said, things change, the world changed. Your teachers maybe have more skills, so you can add more to your policy. So you can decide, we review this policy once a year. So if we create the policy in March 2021, we will review the policy in March 2022. Who is going to do this? Who will be reviewing the policy? And there's also even in here another link to a policy that you can look at. So we've given you as much information and help as I think you possibly can get. The second one is your performance management policy. Now you can use the same cover, the school name, and now it will be your performance management policy. Again, who wrote the policy? When was it written? Who will review it? When was it approved? And when does it have to be reviewed? And in your performance, evaluation policy, performance management and development, you just have to consider these 4 things. 4 things. Number 1 is, how do I manage the performance of my teachers? So, who do I do lesson observations? Okay, so we will have 3 formal lesson observations. You will get 1 formal lesson observation every term. If you have 3 terms, if you have 4 terms, it might be 4. If you have 2 semesters, it might be 2 formal lesson observations. And one informal lesson observation, and one performance interview where you will set your targets for the year. This will happen in January. This will happen in June. This will happen in August. This will happen, the final interview, final evaluation will happen in November, right? So the process, who will do it? Who's going to observe the teachers? Who is their line manager? Who will give them feedback? So you describe that, right? Then you have to have the forms that you will use. Now, I've shared with you the NAMA observation lesson observation form. And you can use this form as it is, or you can adapt it according to what you believe your teachers need to do, right? So it doesn't have to have all of this. Maybe next year you reduce, maybe you only look at 4 of these things. And the following year you can add and you can add. It's all up to you what forms you will be using. So you will have a lesson observation form, you will have a teacher target form, target setting form. And if you have any questions, ask Madam Ajabu, Mr. Combo. There are a few of our coaches who have really good staff performance management policies in place. And then you have to think, okay, so how am I going to develop the teachers, right? So how will teachers grow? How do we train teachers in our school? Do we use PLCs? Do teachers have access to external workshops? Do we expect of them to read at least 3 articles every semester and share it with their friends? Do we have peer coaching? How do we develop teachers in our school? Do we give teachers access to further study? Do we have teacher lectures? Do we do case studies or action research? This will be different from school to school. And then the last bit is, what about teachers who are not achieving their targets? So for them, there is a performance improvement plan. So in July, we look at the teacher's performance, we look at the students' marks, we look at the lesson observations, we look at the teacher's planning, we look at whether they've achieved their targets, and we see, this teacher is not achieving the targets. So you're going to go on an improvement plan. So somebody works with you to put an action plan to fix the problems that you are seeing. And then, of course, what happens if a teacher still cannot achieve? Well, you've had 2 warnings, you've had this support, you've had this. By the end of the year, we've done all of this, yet you are still not improving. So what's going to happen? That would be the decision that you have to make. Or teachers who are exceeding, who are doing really well, what's in it for them? Is there a bonus? Is there a promotion? Is there access to further study? What's in it for the teachers who are exceeding their targets? And this is what you describe in your school performance management policy. So where do you start? What are you going to do? This is my advice, is form a small policy working group. And you can have a working group that works on teaching and learning policy, and you can have another working group that works on your performance management policy. You can have another working group who develops an environment policy, a behavior policy. Because if you divide the work, after you give this group of people an overview of, this is what the policy must look like, here are examples of the policy, let them go and come up with a draft. Empower your staff to help design and develop these policies. Because if you have other people that work with you And it's not just the SLT or the school manager or the school principal who comes up with a policy. People will be more eager to follow the policy. And if they break the policy or they don't do, you can go back and say, but hey, you made the policy, you gave the input, but you are not doing it. So it's very helpful. Now, I would never make this policy group too big, because if it's too many people in a group, then it doesn't get done. My advice would be 3 people, 3 per policy, but they can go and ask other people's opinions. And then the second step, once you have you've decided which policies you have formed this working group, then look at what you have in place. Which policies do you have? Are they available? Where do people find them? Are they in a book? No, never do that. Because if it's in a book, we wouldn't want to change it, right? Because we've spent money on printing the book. Put it online in a Google Drive so that it's easier to change. What do we have? Sometimes you have a lot of policies in place, but they're all in different documents and in different places. So maybe sometimes you can combine some of the ones you have into one document. And then look at, is the format the same? Is the numbering consistent? Do we have the number, are our policies numbered? So it's easy for us to follow them. And then I'd say once you've looked at whatever you have, now you will decide what policies are you now going to work on. Maybe you have a teaching and learning policy, but it's very old. So you might want to review it. Maybe you don't have this policy, so now you put together a little action plan. What are you going to do? Who's going to be involved? By when is it going to be ready? Just very easy, a simple action plan like we've been sharing with you all the time. And then they have to develop the policy draft. It must be shared. People give feedback. And once the policy is final and approved by the management, it must be shared. This is so important. Policies are not about having files and files and files full of paper, full of dust. A policy is only effective if it is implemented. And how will you know? You've got to follow up. If we say in our policy that teachers should use one visible thinking structure at least twice a week in their lesson plans, you have to follow up. Are they doing it? Do they know what to do? If my policy is about students must clean the classes at the end of the day and put the chairs on top of the desks and sweep the class or whatever. This is part of our environment policy. Well, are they doing it? People will not do it if it's not being followed up on. Or they might do it in the beginning. They say new broom sweep clean, right? But a month later, nobody's doing it anymore. I'm sure you've had that case as well. So you have to share it. You must get people's feedback, and you must also make sure that the stakeholders, the parents, know the policies that they need to know. They don't need to know all the policies of the school, but anything that is relevant to them, they must know. Or the community, or the taxi drivers, or the people who deliver food. I mean, whoever is relevant must know what the rules, the procedures, and everything is in the school. Now, what is your target? As I said right in the beginning, all NAMA schools should have a new policy. So if you have existing policies from before, you can't just say, oh, here's my policy. We want to see that you have a new policy, because we know, I'm going to take you back to the data right there in the beginning. The data showed us that only 10% of schools in Tanzania, NAMA schools, are at level 2. with regards to policies. So it means that there's room for everybody to develop or improve their policies. So what do we want you to do? We need to see that you are going to work on these policies, because this will be very important for your next evaluation. And in that evaluation, NAMA would want to see that the school is improving and that there is growth. Now, we know it's not about paperwork. We have policies because policies will improve the quality of your school. So you must think of having a new policy. Now, what do? All schools must have a teaching and learning policy. If you already have a teaching and learning policy that you developed recently, and you have a performance management and development policy, then choose another one from that list that we've mentioned to show you've got a new policy. If your policies were developed within the past 2 months, you can use those policies and submit those policies. But I don't want to see policies from 2020. It must be new policies for your school after the baseline, right? So if you don't have a teaching and learning policy, that's what you will do. That's what you will submit. If you have a teaching and learning policy, but you don't have a staff development policy, that's what you should focus on. If you have both of those and they are well established, great. If you did it this year, your job is done. If you don't, if you have this from before, work on a new policy. Try and find another policy that you can develop, or at least review to make sure that your policy is, the date is relevant within this year, that this is a new or revised policy that is going to be implemented, so that when the team goes to your school next year, they will look at your policy and they will see, is this policy being implemented? If it's a teaching and learning policy, in the interview, they can ask the teachers, what is written in your teaching and learning policy? They can see in the lesson observations whether teachers are implementing the teaching and learning policy. They will ask the school leaders and the teachers about their own performance management. Do you have a target? What do you need to improve? How are you developing? What professional development are you participating in? So we will do that triangulation of data. Not because NAMA is checking on you, but because we believe this is what will set your school apart from other schools in the country. And you can just click on this link and it will take you to the NAMA index. We've given it to you every time. This is our 5th and last training session. And we also have a feedback questionnaire that we would love for you to participate and to share. And I am going to give you the link to this, this form so that you can complete this, because this will be your exit ticket. So I have talked so much, so I'm now going to keep quiet and I'm going to hand over the floor to you for questions, comments, or anything that you want to know more about. Yes. Or you can also, if you have questions, you can write your questions in the chat box as well. or I'm going to go around and take some turns. You will see in the questionnaire that I've asked you, I'm asking you, what was your school score on your report for SL, for School Life Leaders 4, as well as your score for, I think it was, what did I say? Let's just go and have a look. I can't remember now, old age. I asked you your score for SLL4. Yeah, I asked you that score. So you would have to look at your report and say, what is your score and what are your next steps that you are going to do after this session? So let me ask you, do you have any questions, any comments, any feedback, or anything you would like me to explain more for you? This is a good opportunity for you to ask, because I'm here and Madam Ajabu is here, Mr. Combo is here, we are all here and we can all help respond to any questions. Is it clear to you what you are expected to do? Can you show me whether you are clear? Mr. Sadullah, you know what is expected of you? Mr. Selemani, yes. Mr. Suleiman, Hamad, you know what you must do? Can you show me a thumb?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Juma, Mr. Hussein, yes? You know what's expected of you? Okay. Questions or feedback? Mr. Ali, did this help you? Silence.
There is a question from a chat. I mean, it's from chat box. Someone is asking if you can repeat a little bit about the behavior policy.
About the behavior policy. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Combo, because I'm trying to manage all of this at the same time. Why do we need a behavior policy? We need to establish the rules of how do we expect our students to behave, right? So we can say, this is what we believe a student in Kudos or in whatever school you are in Al-Falah, Muslim or Islamic school, this is what the profile of a student that who is respectful, a student who doesn't bully others, a student who takes ownership of their own learning, a student who is punctual in the class, who respects the property of the school. You know, you can describe, what do you feel as a school? What is a good learner? Somebody who asks questions, somebody who tries to solve their own problems, whatever. You will describe that, because every school will have a different profile. And then you will also in your behavior management policy mention because sometimes students don't do their homework. Sometimes students are disrespectful. Sometimes students do bully others. Sometimes they do things they're not supposed to do. So what's the process? What will happen if a student does not respect the rules of the school? The first time they do it, the second time they do it. Do you have a system? Warning, maybe some schools use, like in soccer, a yellow card and a red card. Or do you have a book where it's written down? Can students earn points for good behavior or for extra work or for showing initiative or doing more than what is expected? What if a student earned 25 points? Do they get a certificate? Or they lost 25 points? What happens then? Do you call the parents to the school? So the rules of that, how you will manage the behavior, what are the rewards, what are the consequences, and the system that every teacher must follow in the school. Students must know, parents must know, teachers must know, administrators must know, and everybody must follow the same system. and it's described in your behavior policy. Does that answer your question?
Okay, there is another question asked at the chat box.
Yes, the 5 C's.
Yeah.
So that was Mr. Selemani. Let's just hear from Mr. Selemani. Are you happy with the answer? Mr. Selemani, did I answer your question? Ah, I see a thumb. Thank you. Okay, so the 5 C's. Who of you would like to take the challenge and see if you can? If I had sweets, I would be giving you sweets now. What's the 5 C's? Who of you, I want to challenge you. What are they? What do they stand for? Who would like to earn some virtual sweets? Yes, Mr. Combo.
Critical thinking,
Yes.
collaboration,
Yes.
creativity, communication.
Yes.
The fifth one, I don't remember.
Who can come up with the first one? So, collaboration, right?
Critical thinking,
communication,
creativity.
The last one? It's a new one. They only added this like in, not recently, maybe in the last 2 years. Before they only always spoke of 4. But then they said this 5th one is very important and this one is character. Or in some countries, they say citizenship, and some countries say 6. Character and citizenship must be added. So character is about, you know, respect, emotional intelligence, behavior towards other people, right? They say, how can you be ethical? And it's part of our NOMA index as well, right? So let me give you an example. You can be a bank robber. You plan a big bank robbery. You are creative, right? Because you come up with a good method. You can communicate because you are communicating with your fellow thieves, right? You collaborate because you work together as a team to do this bank robbery. And you use critical thinking because you're solving problems. How am I going to open the safe? How am I? But one is missing, and that one is character. You are not ethical if you do that. So, or another one was, let's say you develop a very dangerous new weapon. You know, so you worked in a team. You were creative, you were collaborative, but I don't have character, I don't have citizenship, I don't have respect for other people. So as a 21st century learner, I also need that element. Did I answer your question, Mr. Sulaiman? Mr. Sulaiman Hamad?
Yes, of course.
Good. I love questions. Questions make life so much better. Okay, somebody says about, yes, Mr. Ali.
Yeah, I want to ask you just to know if I want in behavioral policy.
Yes.
I can add something regarding punishment. Can it fit in the behavior policy?
Yes, so, but I don't like the word punishment. I prefer to use the word consequences, right?
Consequences.
So, consequences. So, you know, if we say to children, you always have a choice. You always have a choice, but every choice has a consequence, right? So I can choose to keep to the rules, or I can choose not to keep to the rules. If I choose to bully somebody, this will be the consequence, right? So we don't say punishment, we can say the consequences. What will happen to you if you break the rule? So, and the reason is because the word punishment is a very you know, it's a very negative word. And sometimes, you know, if we use the idea of positive behavior management rather than punishment. And Mr. Ali, one of the things that really came out in the surveys, you know, of the students across most of the schools was that they live in fear of their teachers. Not all the schools, I'm not saying all the schools, but a lot of students wrote about the punishment that they are getting in schools. They're getting caning, they are being caned by the teachers. They are being treated harshly. There's no, you know, a child who lives in fear of punishment is never going to be able to be as creative as they should be. But if we say consequences, it gives them a feeling that they are still making a choice. Okay, you chose to behave like this, and now these are the consequences. So yes, Mr. Ali, it must be in your behavior management policy, because children are children. They will break the rules, right? So, and they must know if it's one time, if it's two times, if it's a pattern, if it's you know, a very serious offense, this is the consequence immediately. You bring a weapon to school, the consequence, immediate expulsion. You know, so it must be clear. This is the result. This is what will happen to you if you don't adhere to the rules. Yeah, very good question.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm preaching, but you know, I think I always say, if we catch children doing things right, especially if you work with teenagers, they will want to be rebels. But if children learn from when they are small that I can choose, nobody can force me. Okay, I suppose if somebody holds a gun against my head, I suppose, but you know, that doesn't happen in the school, right? Nobody can make you do something. And you often hear children say, he made me do it. She made me do it, right? I'm sure you've heard that, right? But I always have a choice. So if you use these words all the time, it's the choice that you make. You choose to behave. You choose to break the rule. You choose to do your work. You choose to be respectful, or you choose not to be respectful. This is the result. And it really makes a very big difference. Mohammed Yusuf, you say punishment for staff. What do you think, guys? Do you think we can use the word punishment for staff? Majabu, what's your feeling?
Punishment for student or for staff?
Yeah. Should we use
punishment?
Should we use the word punishment when we talk about staff?
No.
I don't think so. Does anybody feel, anybody else who has a feeling about this? Mr. Juma? Mr. Suleiman, what do you think? Do we say punishment for staff? How do you feel when you see that word? Doesn't make you feel good, right? You're like, punishment for staff, consequences. Rather use that word. It's a much better way of, and I know in Tanzania, I've seen it myself. You have a rewards and punishment file, but you know, can you put consequences instead of punishment? Will that be against the government rules?
I think this is much better rather than punishment.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we start making a change, right? You've got a good way to share. Somebody asked, what about non-NAMA schools? Yes, of course. You are welcome to develop this, because you never know. You know, the NAMA program can expand, or your school. I mean, any good school needs a policy, right? So whether you're in a NAMA school or not, you have to have these things in place, because that makes school. Yeah. So let's see, there's another message, another question. Yes, thank you for the feedback, Mr. Mohammedi. I like what you've said. We cannot achieve what we cannot measure. Very good. I mean, if you don't have nothing will work if you don't know what it, and no teacher, no student, no parent can behave if they don't know what is expected of them. So we have to make it clear, and we solve a lot of problems if we are proactive. Think about everything that can go wrong in your school and then say, well, what do we do if this happens? Do we have a policy? Do we know what we need to do? Do people know where to find the policy? You know, and is this policy working? If it doesn't work, change it. You know, nothing's made of cement and stone. It's rules we make, and we have to move with the times. Okay, any other questions? I want to talk to the schools. So by 30 September, we would like to see your new policy or your revised policy, right? So all schools, even if every school just works on a teaching and learning policy, I'll be very happy. But, you know, like teaching and learning policy and staff management policy, those two really do go together. So if possible, but it's something that you should now maybe start thinking about in your SIP for next year. Which policies maybe you want to do next year? You don't try and do them all this year. It's too much, right? So, but maybe every 3 months next year, you can set a target for yourself for some new policies that you also still want to put in place. But you are welcome to reach out. You have Madam Ajabu and Mr. Combo. And there are some schools who are really lucky to have been chosen to get extra coaching and support. And unfortunately, not everybody has been able to attend. They've had 5 training sessions already. So you should try to catch up. Reach out to your coaches. They really know what they're talking about, and they can share their experience with you to help you and support you. You know, don't be shy. If you don't know how to do it, let's work together. Let's try and solve the problem. Nobody's going to say to you, huh, you don't know how to do it. Nobody's going to say that, right? We learn from each other and we support each other. And if you want to share your policy and ask your friends to give you, or your peers to give you feedback, do that. You know, so that's the only way that you can make it better. Which language should you use when writing the policy? I think the language should be English, right? You can always translate it. You can always do it in both languages. You all have English teachers and also Swahili teachers who can help you with translation. Do it in one language and then translate it into another language. I think it's a good thing to do. In any case, if you want feedback from me, I can't help you when you give it to me in Swahili. So that's not going to help. But you can get feedback from Ajabu, Madam Ajabu and Mr. Combo. They are there. So if you are one of the schools who are in the coaching group and you haven't attended all the training, please reach out. And if you say you don't have a device, maybe you can borrow from somebody else for those. It's so important. And you have this opportunity to learn, right? This opportunity is going to go away. So make use of the opportunity while you still have it. Okay, any other questions before we go?
Hello?
Right. Yes. Yes, Mr. Juma.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. First, yeah, I would like to share one thing according to your presentation today.
Yes.
But I have a general comment about this NAMA Index Assessment Report.
Yes.
You know, in our schools, especially in Tanzania, the owner of schools who are operating the schools and so-called government educational policy, and they are assuming that this is just enough policy to run our school. Then we found that we are operating the schools without very specific policy in our schools, under the umbrella that we are using government policies in teaching and learning, and they're all about the running of the schools. So according to this assessment, we have realized that we need to have very specific policies so as we can meet or can achieve those objectives of the government about teaching and learning, or general objective of government toward the education system. So before, we are just running the school in the assumption that we have policies in different programs in the school because government already prepared the acts, they have protocols, they have different principles which govern all schools in the in the Tanzania. So under that information, that's why we find that most of our schools were found that they have no policies, and we were just running the school in that way. So eventually we found that we needed to have individual school policies in each specific program which we have in our school, so as we can achieve those goals, whether it's the school goals or government goals. So according to this feedback and the report and the way you have elaborated it today, we found that it is very important to have very specific policies in different programs, which of course cannot violate that government policies. But the way I know and with my experience, most of these schools, especially private schools, were operating under so-called government educational policies, something which maybe it was quite difficult to achieve those goals within the school, even to the society, as that of government in general. So my general observation and comment around this report of NAMA, that is very, very crucial for our school, and we need to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Juma. Yeah, I think it's always a question, right? If you're a private school and you've got government policies. Now, I think it's not wrong to use the government policy if the policy is relevant to your school, right? So as you say, sometimes there's a policy, but it will not work in your own school. It's a government policy, and we say, oh, we have a policy, but what happens in reality in the classroom does not reflect the quality of teaching and learning that should be happening. And I mean, for me, when I go to a school, and for me, the most important thing I want to see is what goes on in the classrooms. If I see consistent learning, consistent pedagogy, consistent innovation in the classrooms, in the students' work, and the way that the students interact with the teachers, when I observe them, are they working together in groups? And I see this across all of the subjects, then I know there's a policy, because people are doing it in a consistent way. If I don't see it, I will then start saying, well, why is this not happening? Why don't I see this? Why do I see this here and this there? Where's your policy? So that's how, and that's how we work as school inspectors. But there is this question of government policy and your own policy. I'm not saying, you should throw away a government policy, but for your school, you have a government policy, but what works in your school? And that's always the important question. And I think the questions to ask is, okay, so if this happens, what will we do? If a fire breaks out, what will we do? Yes, Major.
Yeah, I just want to make some clarification about the government policy and the private schools. We have a revised policy. In 2095, we have a government policy which based from the pre-primary up to the advanced secondary level. And then in 2014, we have another revised policy from the government, and also they make an amendment in 2016. When you pass through that government policy, you can see that. I just want to focus on the secondary level.
No.
They adopt the competence-based strategy, competence-based curriculum, the way of teaching in a collaborative way. And they indicate various steps, how in a classroom, teacher must be able to conduct this collaborative learning. When you read this policy in detail, you can see that there is another, they call it, educational standard they provided unfortunately was only shared for some of the head of secondary schools in government schools, and they didn't share it to all other schools. And when you go to the ministry website, you can see that the policy standards and how to implement the collaborative learning within the classroom. The problem of most of the private schools, especially our schools, the school owner may establish the school without any kind of document. And if you want to register the school, you may just forging some document that I have this policy, I have strategic planning, I have vision and mission, I have this, what you call it, I mean, organization chart and so on. We are just forging it for the purpose of getting the registration. At the end of the day, they may fail to be implemented. It is where the problem started. But the government have analyzed everything in a good manner, in a good position. It is our responsibility to adopt it from the government and to look the way we want in our school to implement. So this is, I mean, the task of the NAMA index conducted, just open our mind that we know, okay, we lack this and this and this. Well, when you go to the government policy, there is no problem at all. It is okay. And if you have a time, please just go through the website of the ministry. You can get all these documents, even what the standard need to be implemented. And I even surprised myself to see the standard for the production or standard for the, I mean, college teachers. And they emphasize to use, I mean, to focus on collaborative learning, use of CLs, assessment for learning. All these things we are learning from NAMA and RITI, they have in Tanzania. But the problem is, after they have been adopted from Malaysia, how they are going to implement in our school, it is when the problem started. So it is end up to the top leaders who attended the program, and then they adapted to the government system of education, and they fail to cascade into other teachers. They need to have conducting this training, we say in service training for teachers in different levels of the school, from pre-primary up to advanced level. That is what I just want to chip in.
That's you know what, that happens in Malaysia as well. Malaysia's got a fantastic blueprint, wonderful curriculum, but if you go to the classrooms, it's not happening because there's no proper cascading, there's no proper follow-up, there's no proper monitoring, there's no consequence for teachers who don't do what they're supposed to do. So you can have a wonderful policy, but it's how it is implemented in your school that's important. But this is, I mean, I saw those standards, and yes, I mean, it looks amazing, right? It's like, wow, you know, everything we're talking about. But as you say, it's not cascaded, it's not shared, it's somewhere, it's a file somewhere, and it's not implemented or followed upon. But use that as a resource, you know, use that. I mean, it's about whether you are, how are you going to make it happen in your school? It's no use to say, I have this dream journal, but nothing that, you know, it's only a dream. There's no action plan that makes it happen. So training is very important. You can have a policy, you can have standards, but if you don't have a way for teachers to be trained, if you don't have a way to use the data to see what the problems are in your school, then you are not going to be able to reach that wonderful goal that you have. So we can all write a beautiful plan, but how we get there, how we use and implement that plan, that's the problem, right? Thank you for that insight, Majabu. I really appreciate that. Okay, yes, I will give you this presentation. I'm going to just share with you again the link to the questionnaire. If you can please, I'll just put it in the Google, in the chat, just copy it so that you have it, or click on the link so that you can continue with this after the presentation. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you very much. I will also share this recording with Mr. Seleman because I don't have all of your emails. I will share it with the people that I do have, and then you can also get it from them. The EduLead coaches, Madam Majabu, Mr. Combo, Mr. Juma Sombi. and also the ones in the cohort 2 group, Mr. Ali, there's a few of you here who are in the cohort 2 group, and you can also get this from them. So maybe, I know some have left us, but maybe we can have a picture, because before Madam Ajabu reminds me of the picture. Let's see if you can quickly switch on your cameras. And I've also put let me just, everyone, I'm just putting the link to the questionnaire in the form. Okay, can you quickly try? I know some have left us already, but could you switch on your cameras if possible? Mr. Ali Sulaiman, Mr. Mohammed, Juma. Okay, in any case, maybe they don't have enough weak internet connection. Okay, are you ready? Are you looking good? Are you looking nice? We say chins up, right? Okay, 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you learned something, and you're welcome to reach out if you have any questions. And go well, have a good rest tonight, and take care. I know that COVID is increasing in your country. But Jabu, I will share the picture with you, and then you can maybe distribute. I see, I don't see Mr. Seleman is not here anymore from NAMA, from NICE. So I will just share it with you and you can distribute. Thank you, everybody, for your time. I hope you didn't feel you wasted your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, goodbye. Goodbye.